we can have that going. And I see Jessica on as well. Hello, Jessica. Welcome.
Hello. How's everyone?
Good, good.
That's good.
So I guess Karen, was there anything that you'd like to say starting everything off? I see I've been made the presenter, but I'll probably.
But I see it. Yeah, I guess I might mention if people might go ahead and sign into the Google Docs. I think hopefully everybody has access to that. And I'll go ahead and add the link here to go to meeting. Yeah. Yeah, and I think we've got some interesting topics with Luis and Terry on the OGC work from their disasters working group. And we'll be talking some about how we've been doing with the All Hazards Consortium.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, so I think interesting things going on. I see this storm on my screen now.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my second. I've got a 2-monitor setup here, so I'm just putting up the desktop of my one computer. So this isn't live, everybody. This is Hurricane Harvey before he made landfall in Texas. We have no surprise hurricanes going on in the United States right now. Okay. Well, that sounds good. Do you want me to say a few words, Karen, about the All Hazards Consortium, or was there anything that you would like to start off with?
No, I think that would be good. I think we have about 20 to 30 minutes for the OGC presentations.
Sure.
So yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. I'm just connecting, and I'm going to drag this over to the screen here in just a second. But we've been making really good progress with the All Hazards Consortium. Tom Moran just actually Monday and Tuesday of this week had some board meetings with the All Hazards Consortium, and they're making great progress with FEMA and the work that they're doing there. What I'm going to drag over here is the latest version of the All Hazards Consortium GeoCollaborate instance for the dashboard. And I do have kind of an exciting announcement. This is something, Bruce, you can share with the ESIP crowd as well. And that is that, the disaster dashboard was funded as a testbed initiative within the Federation. And that happened over the period of a couple of years. And we've successfully transitioned it over to a sustaining dashboard that the All Hazards Consortium has now picked up the cost for. So this is great. Shows that some investment from the Federation side to help work with data sets and all that sort of stuff has really paid off to show value of earth science data and in a sort of a collaborative common operating picture environment. So now the All Hazards Consortium is paying for it each year, and they're looking at adding all sorts of data sets. And over on the left-hand side here, these are some of the data sets that they're actually they have added, and how they changed the names slightly to really show the utility industry how they can access particular data sets that are important to them. So for example, if you wanted to see where all the fire departments were, I don't know if that's an active link or not, but you can zoom in to certain areas, and it'll go and get all all the fire departments. When I zoom in close here, you can also see the real-time traffic that shows up. So, so these are data layers that are really exciting for them to use. And I can turn the traffic off. They're looking at things like identifying hotels. So they're using this to identify, for example, where all the Marriott hotels are, if the utility trucks need to find places to stay, if they're responding to disasters, if they want to see any, Home Depots, where are the Home Depots, all these things for getting supplies and stuff like that. So this is going to be a good dashboard for us to monitor for important data sets that the All Hazards Consortium is going to be sharing with their members. So that's very good, and we've also found out that our efforts, our ORL efforts, are really turning a lot of heads within the FEMA world as well. A number of people there that are pretty high up have said that they've never heard about efforts to almost certify data in its operational readiness level capability. And this is something that FEMA is very, very interested in because, in times of disaster, organizations, emergency operations centers, will use any type of data that they can get their hands on. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes it isn't. When you don't know where the data comes from or who's touched the data or anything like that, it has if it's not trusted, it could really sway decision making, perhaps at the $1 million or multi-million-dollar level. So we're really excited about our efforts that we're having for the ORL levels, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in this telecon. But the All Hazards Consortium is making a big impression there, putting that to work. And I did just want to add as well that the All Hazards Consortium and StormCenter have been working together to enable multiple instances of GeoCollaborate to be connected. And what that means is that organizations that have data to offer can stand up an instance of GeoCollaborate and stage their data for rapid integration into the dashboard. So people can get data from trusted sources, and those trusted sources can turn on and off the data access. So if they're having a problem or anything like that, they could just flip a switch and turn the data off so it's not accessible to everyone, so they're getting old data. It's also opening up doors for other private sector organizations to stage data sets that might be useful in times of disaster response. So this is really a very exciting model that the All Hazards Consortium has put together, and they're out participating in several meetings over the next couple weeks, utility meetings and trucking meetings and things like that, because now they've really got their eyes on opening up the world to data sources that people may not have known about. As far as us in the Federation, we're going to continue to push for data sets that are evolving and maturing so we can start to get those into the ORL level pathway and see how we can use those data sets for decision making and put it right out there in front of decision makers and all that stuff. So that's also another exciting development. So I'll pause there to see if anybody has any questions about that part of the call here.
Dave, this is Bob Downs. I just want to congratulations. This is great news.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really great that that we're making such progress, and we're getting demand to start labeling data sets as ORL levels. And the All Hazards Consortium is like, hey, look, we can't sit back and study this all the time. Let's start putting it out there so people start saying, hey, what is an ORL1? what is an ORL2. So we should talk about that when we get to that part of the call today, so we can identify that. And by the way, Bob, and I don't know if Bob Chen's on either, but the
No,
whole,
Bob Chen is tied up at the moment.
okay, no worries, no worries. The whole concept of doing the population extraction, and I want to show everybody on your screen on this particular dashboard, you see this little icon that shows the people. And I'm going to turn the Home Depot's off, but I'll click on this little icon and select a shape like a freehand polygon and draw it. And I'll just draw a freehand polygon northeast of Washington, D.C. and Prince George's County. And essentially what this is going to do when I let go, it's going over to Bob Downs and CDAC and extracting the estimated population in that polygon. And it's doing it in real time. So before I even got finished describing what it was doing, it pulled out the population and the land area in square kilometers. So this is something that that is turning some heads as well, and I think it just opens the doors to many services that can be offered through web-based queries that that we can bring into a collaborative environment. And so I'm really excited about this too, and it just shows a perfect example of another ESIP Federation member and partners working together to put their data and data services to work to benefit another organization that's actually using it for decision making.
So on the screen, Dave, I was just wondering whether you would put the operational level of that data set somewhere so that people could see it or obtain that information if they wanted to know what the operational level was.
Yeah, it might be, Bob, that maybe a link comes into the population estimate. This data set is ORL1 and then has a hyperlink to ORL1, and you can click on it and get a table. Something like that. We'll have to talk about it and see what the best way to present that information is. We also have, I don't think it's on this particular dashboard, but actually, while we're connected, I can probably put this up because I have another instance of GeoCollaborate running. Let me go to my instance real quick. I'll log in as the leader, and I'll drag this over into the screen so it can share this one as well, and you can just see me as I'm working on it here. So I'll continue with that session. So I'm going to drag this over. This is now full screen. Make it a little less than full screen here. There we go. Matter of fact, yesterday I outlined this area on the Maryland's eastern shore because the HRR model was forecasting smoke movement, and I zoomed down into it and found out they were doing a prescribed burn in the Blackwater Wildlife Refuge area, and this was the smoke plume that was the HRR was forecast to smoke yesterday. So that's pretty cool. But what I want to do is go in and get a data set, let's say like the radar, real-time radar data from the National Weather Service. I'll turn that on. I'll make the base map the satellite base map here. So so this is what's going on right now. But here's an example of a banner that we might want to start using. So this particular banner is, let's see. Oh, that's not one. Wait a minute. Sorry. Let me display another banner. This isn't the right one I was talking about. I'll put this one up, like a precipitation forecast from the National Weather Service. So if, let me drag it a little bit up more towards the top of the screen here. So as you can see, if I put on the actual precipitation forecast, let's see here. I think that is, that's not the current weather. Here we go, forecast layers. If I turn on the QPF forecast here of how much precipitation is forecast over the next 24 hours, then we have this banner down here that says Precip Forecast and National Weather Service, and over on the left-hand side it says ORL1 with the National Weather Service logo on it. So this could be an opportunity for us to think about, in some cases, how we want to display particular data sets from agencies. And then this ORL1 could be defined as you're a follower down below. We created the ability to put in layer descriptions in followers. Let me see if I put it into my particular instance here. Or it might actually, I'm sorry, it might be in the dashboard. So yeah, so you see, you have on this dashboard of my instance the data set, the banner, and then down here is a layer description. So if I go turn on a health report from, let's say, the CDC, we were just doing some testing the other day, and we turn on the health banner, you'll see it says CDC at the bottom, ORL1, if they were issuing some sort of health advisory or breakout. I can activate that data set on my lead. Oh, it is. Oops, it is on. The reason we didn't see it here is because it's out west. So these dots here are sample CDC advisories. For example, if you click on it, it tells you, Steamboat Springs, influenza B, comments, public health advisory, flu outbreak at heightened levels detected at Steamboat Springs, all flights delayed until health screening complete for passengers, expected airport open at a particular time. So that could be a CDC data set with a CDC label underneath of it. So that's just a quick example. I was moving around pretty quick to show this kind of stuff, but it really does kind of make it real when you see that sort of stuff on a banner. Long answer to your question, Bob, but does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does. It's very impressive.
Thank you. Thank you. It's going to take a lot of input from the group here, and the work that Carrie's doing and Raphael and Carrie were working on, and that will continue. But once you kind of see those ORL levels with a logo next to it, it starts to make you feel kind of good that we're on a good track, and people actually understand the concept of ORL levels, and we can guide them along the pathway and mature the approach as we're talking about it. So I'm very excited about that. We all should be, because we're all working on the ORL definitions. Is there any other questions?
Just a comment. Yeah, you can really see that the focus of these different data sets is just all kinds of information related to emergency response, hotels, and what I'm hoping we can do is we have weather data well represented, and the ORL1 level comes from the fact that data has been able to extract this directly from the official National Weather Service. But hopefully there will be other products now that ESIP people are working on that can find their way to value the work that these emergency response teams are performing. Just kind of our job going ahead. And part of that is certainly identifying those data sets within our Earth observation repositories. And so we have a little bit of discussions happening there as to how we might improve that. And that's a main reason why when Luis offered to talk to our group about the work OGC has been doing with their disasters working group, I thought that the time was really good as we are looking forward to expand the data sets into other EO science data that can be transformed into application appropriate data.
Yeah, absolutely, Karen. I think that, and this is a perfect segue to you, Luis, to start your presentation, and I'll hand it over to you here in just a second. I think, Karen, that what this really shows now is we have a pretty much an operational pipeline for data sets to make their way into this environment, which is being used by real decision makers. And we could even set up another testbed area or alternate instance or something like that, where people can come and look at test data instead of putting it into an operational dashboard. Put it into a test dashboard so people can start to taste some new data sets that are emerging. And now that we have the ability to bring in disparate data sources into a collaborative common operating picture, I think the sky is the limit, and it should be quite exciting at the next Federation meeting to show people something concrete that really is not only turning heads, but laying down a pathway for the applications of earth science and other geospatial type of data.
So, Dave, this is Luis. It's very impressive what you guys are doing, in particular having all this analysis on top of the portal. Has there been any discussion about using interfaces, or if I am a mobile application developer, for example, can I access the information that you have right now on GeoCollaborate? And if there are other organizations providing like OGC standards based data, is that easy to for you guys to put it in the GeoPortal?
Oh yeah, Luis, that's a great question, and this actually, if you open up your mobile device and go to the address that you see up here and press follow, it'll work on any mobile device in real time. So you don't have to download an app or anything. It works on tablets, phones, any type of mapping platform and that you want to use. And yes, there is if you're looking at the screen, there's a way that you can add data layers to cache, and data layer formats are all in here: dynamic, WMS, KML, Atom, GeoJSON, JSON, CSV, feature services, Esri feature services, and Real Earth is University of Wisconsin that's providing all of the NOAA satellite data. So if I wanted to go in and turn on a latest GOES 16 satellite image, I can turn that on, and we've got real-time satellite data that's showing from GOES East right now. And this data is updated live every 5 minutes. Nice wave clouds on the
By any chance, have you experimented with WFS features as well as WMS?
We certainly can, and we don't particularly like WMS because they're image files, but we certainly can.
Well, you had WMS, I believe, in your drop down, but I did not have my glasses on.
Yeah.
Can you drop down again? What I was asking about is WFS for feature services. Have you experimented with that again? Any at all?
Yes, we can do feature services. Is that the same as feature services?
WFS is web feature services. WMS is web map services.
Yeah. So in the drop down here, when I go to add a layer, you can see feature right here.
Is that WFS? Is that what you mean by that?
Feature services, they're Esri ArcGIS feature services. So I don't know if it's the same as WFS because I'm not really the programmer. But I'm sure that we can do WFS just like we can do any of these other ones here. If that was a distinct format that people had to load right in, then we'd have to just work with it and load it in. Most of these, the dynamic are like REST services, you know.
I understand. Yeah. So the WFS is a specific open standard that's used worldwide. Esri, the Esri feature is a Esri specific REST service. So there's a difference.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, we'd be very open to working with WFS and seeing how that works within this. GeoCollaborate really just pulls in disparate data sources from any location. You don't have to serve them from any particular location. And this kind of model really points to the data curators becoming the data experts and offering their data up as services because we don't reserve any data. It comes right from the trusted source.
Right. Well, the key is making sure, and the pun was very good. You're open to, that was good. The key is that you're able to receive it in that format that they're serving it up in also, and that's what Luis was referring to. So you have a nice starting list. What would be interesting is, you know, when we, after we do our presentations, is looking at a short list of additional type of open standards that you would maybe look at in the near term or in the long term of adding into here to be able to receive in from other types of open standards. But you have a really nice list to start with. Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Terry. And you know, we're definitely open to that. And the main concern for real-time data sharing in a collaborative environment is that you have to consider the sort of the lowest bandwidth person that you're collaborating with, and that's typically a mobile device, you know, mobile phone, so you can get information to them and not blow up their data plans and stuff like that. But we can certainly pick this conversation up, and I'd like to hand over the display to I guess I'll do it to Luis first. Is that right?
Yeah, because Luis is going to use part of the 20 minutes, and I get what's left.
So Terry, you don't want to start? You don't have an introduction to the disasters work?
Yeah, I'd love to start. And that way you get whatever time left.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Terry, you are now the presenter.
All right. I will go to the PowerPoint slide. This is the website here. Matter of fact, I'll put this site in the chat real quick. If anybody's interested, or if somebody wants to put that in the Google Docs, feel free to. It would be of interest for you to go back later. And I'll go to PowerPoint mode. Can you see that fine?
Yep, yes. I can see it just fine.
Okay, great. So the first few slides are way too boring for you all, so I will go through this quickly. And I apologize. One of the interesting things on this slide is the many different types of places and legitimate organizations you can get stats for all have different numerical numbers for this. And I had the reference for where I pulled these, and in the last couple of iterations of presenting this, it seems to have disappeared from here. So I present this without a reference on here, so therefore it's not really valid, but this is from one of the legitimate sites that I got this from. So instead of presenting it for good values, this is just fictitious numbers in this case because it's not referenced correctly. But you know, this is really why we do this, because of the enormous cost and impacts of the disasters that we have annually in some cases. I found this site from NOAA. This is an incredibly site if you have a chance to visit this, and if there's anybody from NOAA on the call, thank you for their information on what's happening in the US with disasters. If you haven't been on there and looked at this with the different types and the different impacts from the different types of disasters that actually occur each year. So OGC, what we actually do with disasters, we have a very strong emergency and disaster management disaster working group that meets regularly. The pilot that I am going to be talking about, we're working in conjunction with the domain working group. Luis, in a short amount of time, is going to talk about the and Don Sullivan, who's on the call, is the chair for the domain working group, or one of the co-chairs. And actually, we actually folded another group into this because it's such a powerful and good working group. And I'm not just saying that because Don's on the call, as Luis just reminded me. Luis just did a Strengthening Disaster Risk Reduction Across the Americas Summit that he's going to be talking about after my presentation, if I give him any time. Testbed 13, if any of you have been involved with test beds over time, and Karen definitely has, a lot of our test beds, we always want to have a point for the output of a test bed. So we don't want to just in a test bed we have modified standards. We want to have them concentrate on a specific task and how those standards can be used in a real world application. And usually the end of the testbed, the real world application, is about a sort of disaster. Testbed 13, or actually testbed 12 was around a flooding in San Francisco with sea level rise. And most of our testbeds were about similar sort of scenarios. And if we go back through time, so testbed 12 actually has some really nice videos that if I had had time, I would have played one or two of them just to show some of the examples of using the actual standards in dealing with different parts of the sea level rise and disasters and storms that we had in our scenario for testbed 12. So one of the things that there's two projects I'm working on right now, and I'm very fortunate because both of them been things I've been wanting to do for most of my career, or at least for the last 15 years, because I realize there's been a gap. There's been a lot of work around, in this specific example, around the disasters, where there's a lot of disparate work going on, especially with the OGC side. But we really needed a major type of a concept development study and a pilot to bring together the different type of disasters work and actually see how does this cohesively work together and support different types of disasters. And we've just been funded, started late last year, and we're into it now this year, in pulling together a very comprehensive plan on a pilot for disasters. We're in the concept development study now, and I'll talk a little, and that's what the rest of my presentation is about. So I'm really excited about this. We've been working pieces about it all throughout the history, I believe, of OGC, but now we're looking at it in a comprehensive study. So it's been the concept development study is how we're going to approach the entire pilot and future work. And the concept development study has been sponsored by FGDC and USGS. And in this concept development study, we're also seeking out sponsors for the actual pilot itself. And we are truly trying to bring together stakeholders for the disasters communities and assess how well we actually exchange data during the disasters and to lay the groundwork for the future pilots. We're actually getting pretty far along in this already. The phase one in this concept development study, as I said, is to assess the current state of the use of an SDI for pilots. And that first bullet actually has already been very interesting. If somebody could tell me when I have about 4 minutes left, I would appreciate it. The actual term spatial data infrastructure has already risen quite a few questions every time we talk to different people. It's like, are you looking for the disaster SDI, a disaster SDI? So what does an SDI actually mean in the disaster mode area? And it's interesting because so many people have different opinions. But one opinion most people have is there is not a single SDI for disasters, unless it's sometimes a stakeholder who thinks they've created the SDI for disasters. But almost everybody else in the community believes so far that it's a series of SDIs that tie together into a overall SDI, but it's a series of SDI. So it's an interesting conversation just on what does the term SDI actually mean for the disaster community. We're going to be doing more about the next bullet. We just put the RFI out, and that's the last bullet on the first phase. We just put a request for information out, in which we're going to gather the information for the what's going on. Thanks, Luis. And from the phase one is how we're defining what's going to happen in the pilot. The pilot is articulated to start around the July-August timeframe based on the results from the concept development study. Kind of the same type of thing. What you would expect from a pilot is, gathering the requirements from the SDI like we talked about, helping define what the SDI actually is, making the data available like you talked about in the earlier presentation, long-term practices for an SDI using the open standards. And here's the biggest part of the pilot is actually now implementing it and complementing it with the tools and applications and clients that will allow it to be actually used in a disasters pilot. Actually taking it all together and running it in a real-time scenario. And that's what we're going to be doing in the pilot. Here's the schedule that we have so far. Luis talked to the ESIP meeting in January. The RFI actually came out the 28th of February. In March, we're going to have some workshops. They're mostly being set up in conjunction with the sponsors, so we don't have the exact dates for those. The RFI closes the 30th of March. We're engaging with a lot of groups. We're going to write the draft from the concept development study in the June timeframe, and the RFQ for the pilot disasters will be in August timeframe. So that's about what I've got. This is, like I said, something we've been driving for a long time, to actually look at what is the best way to approach a pilot for disasters. And yes, we're talking about disasters, and we have not decided which disaster we're going to look at in the first year, because the sponsors actually want to keep this going for a few years and look at different types of disasters to see if the type of SDI that we set up for the initial disaster can be used in multiple different types of disasters, which is a very interesting story by itself, because different disasters require very different types of data. Can you set up a type of SDI that's useful across different types of different disasters? So it's an ambitious process. Should be fascinating to work with. Actually, for the RFI, I'm hoping that Dave will actually look at the RFI and give us feedback for your portal, because that's exactly the type of information we need, is what you're working with. So, thank you.
Well, that sounds great, Terry. I will be happy to do that, and also I think some of the efforts of the disaster lifecycle cluster could prove very valuable in here, and we thank you for giving us this presentation and this information. So we are, again, for everybody online, we are recording this, and we'll put the recording up. Bruce, you can help me figure out how to do that again, because when I convert it, I get a big file on my computer, so I just need a place to upload it, I guess. So we can post it up there.
I have about 6 of those I need to upload before the week is out myself.
Exactly. So while I'm switching the screen over to Luis, does anyone have any questions for Terry?
So we really do hope you all become involved with this. We want to continue working with you on this very seriously.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, there's it's really interesting. We were I was giving a presentation remotely in a live demo of GeoCollaborate to a group in Tampa, for Tampa Bay, for maritime safety and port security, and they said, hey, we just submitted a proposal to DHS to have a series of workshops around the country at various ports to define what kind of common operating picture they need for port security, so they can develop a common operating picture that's collaborative by 2030. And he said, I just saw you demonstrate it right here. So it's interesting to make sure that anybody that knows about these activities, that we work together, so no one remains delayed, or we can use technology and stuff like that to leapfrog what other people have done, so we can make these efforts really make a big difference. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. So
count on you I can count on some of you for looking at the RFI and sending it back in, possibly from your agencies, I hope. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Terry. Well, I'd like to introduce Luis. The desktop is yours.
Good, thank you. And just what Terry said is really important, and this is a big opportunity for all of you involved in disaster, in providing architectures, technology, that you give us the feedback, because that is going to be captured in a report that is going to be shared around the world, and we're going to pilot based on that feedback. So that's, you know, very important for us and for everybody working on disasters and information systems. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the report that provides information about the exercise that we did in Buenos Aires in 2018. Maggie Glasgow, I think she's in this call. Now, she did most of the brain work behind it, so I was just looking at what she was doing, and David Green's group, and providing some advice in terms of OGC technologies and some process, but they did most of the work. We captured the report. That was one of our main activities in the exercise. So
I think Maggie's online too.
Okay, good. So if you at any point want to chime and say anything about it, please do so. So there were three main goals. One is strengthen the collective ability to share, in particular in the region of Latin America, disaster data. Second, make awareness of Earth observation data. Right, this was sponsored by NASA. And third, we want to allow data providers and end users to collaborate, find gaps, and find best practices about how to better share data and information. No, what is this? Wait. The summit was co-organized by all these organizations. So some of them in Argentina, others are international organizations, but most of it was NASA. The report was published in February, so it's a public engineering report. The OGC voted to make this public, so anybody can download it. And I'm going to present the highlights of the report. So there were three main findings. One is that we were able to demonstrate how international community, Earth observation international community, can support disasters, emergency management, their response, how to reduce this disaster risk, and how is it possible to provide timely data. The second finding was that it was incredible, the collaboration that we experienced, and hopefully that beginning of collaboration between people that they were not aware that, for example, one group was providing a type of data was kept in the future. A second, we simulated a disaster scenario that was, I think, really cool. I have not seen anything like that. So as I said, NASA's team did a really good job trying to simulate all the details of how a real disaster can be. So I'm going to, as I said, highlight some of the findings. One was that it was very helpful finding some, identifying some areas for collaboration. So that scenario was really, really good. And there were three things that participants said that we can improve on. One is more collaboration, getting better real-time data, and discovery and access of data. Yeah. So for example, Dave's presentation, you know, the one that presented the portal is key, right? How do we discover and access real-time data is really important, collaboration. The participants were different heads. So we had government folks, emergency managers, Earth observation data providers, researchers, non-governmental organizations, humanitarian international groups, and industry commercial companies. So if you were a part of that group, identified with that group, even though maybe you were not an emergency manager, but you said, you know, I'm in the middle of Earth observation and emergency managers, you just picked one and you sat on one particular table and you played the role during the scenario. We had about 130 participants, and each group, as I said, had their own table. Each table had a translator because this was a lot of Spanish speakers. We had a note taker, we had a team lead, we had a communication in charge person that received the emails and sent the emails to all the other groups. We had facilitator, we had the director, there was Maggie, there were observers trying to just observing the scenario and then providing us some feedback. And then we had some special groups, seed rep and sim cells, that they were providing what was going on with the event, the scenario. So this is the agenda. So the first part, the exercise start, we had 2 stages, one storm landfall and flooding, and then a volcano landslide and other events. We ended the exercise, so that was all the morning. And then at the end, we had like a hot wash break and then after action analysis. As I said, this was a fictitious scenario. It was a fictitious region called Disaster, but with a lot of interesting points of interest or features of interest like airports, ports, bridges, dams, and also some identified areas which were large, small, and rural areas. Example of a scenario, I'm not going to go through all the details, but if you see the details of what we were working on, for example, the background for stage 1 identified some information about what was going on with a high pressure front and the temperatures that caused dry forest fires that were important because then we had mineral soil, a lot of typos here, for conditions for landslides. So then we had a tropical depression that caused a tropical storm, and then rainfall that caused a lot of excessive rain and landslides. So it was very detailed. We had very good maps providing information for the participants that they had to then think, oh, what type of data do I need? What do I need to do? Where do I need to relocate the population, etc. And these are some example of the injects, so you get the feeling of what was happening there. For example, fictitious weather servers provide information to the whole room about an emergency alert. So every table received that information. There's another one, says, oh, we have activated the international charter, or we are requesting the activation. Information about what was going on, for example, a dam that collapsed. Getting some particular data about, for example, we need optical satellite drone imagery data for a particular area. Even media injects, which was, I think, very cool. Now, the media wants to know what is the priority, where is the funding going, and then somehow the emergency managers need to respond, which they need to then talk to others, for example, like humanitarian working groups about what they were doing. Request for more data collection, and let me see, here is, yeah, so the Earth observation was saying what type of information they were monitoring. Okay, so I think with those you will get the feeling of what was going on, which I think was very detailed, but the most important part is that people were feeling it, and they had to collaborate. And even there were some tables that they were discussing, and you see like conflict of interest, and the people that had more power than others started to had some real good discussions. It was really good. But most important, people learn about the data that Earth observation was capable of providing, and the collaboration. I think that was very key. So there was no discussion about interfaces or standards. It was more discussion about collaboration, type of data that was needed to provide, to help people take decisions when a disaster occurs and to be prepared. So the next steps that we highlighted in the report was, one, the idea of a pilot based on, for example, the recommendations like discovery and access, and running other future exercise to advance further cross collaboration. I think that's it. I don't know if Maggie or Don, you want to say anything else?
No, this is Don. I think you did a great job, Luis. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Maggie. I think you did a great job as well.
Okay. Good. So any questions, comments?
Oh, this is Karen. I think that the focus on discovery and access of data when a disaster occurs very much overlaps with our current work. And I mean, we're trying to set up a whole strategy for identifying that data based on use case analysis, and then eventually getting to the point where you test and evaluate the data in advance so that when the disaster occurs, you already have a pipeline for getting those data products to a collaborative website, in our case, the daily dashboard. So I think, I think there's a lot of resonance from what you've discovered and what we've been working with.
Good. So if my understanding is correct, the idea of the operational readiness levels is to have the data before in advance, quality control, knowing that it can be used in disasters, and then have all the workflow ready when a disaster occurs.
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Yeah, that's a good description, Luis. The problem that we've seen and have had feedback from the emergency management community around here for many years is, when the disasters hit, it's almost like a free-for-all. People are searching for any type of data they can find, and unfortunately, they get on the internet and they might find, some maps that some high school kid put together in his basement and put up on the internet, right? And so they end up getting a hold of that data and they want to make a decision on it. They don't know what the source is. So we're all about, finding and identifying the trusted data sources, assigning ORL levels to them. And, we're still evolving the criteria for those ORL levels. But once the disaster hits, that's the last thing you want to think about, is whether or not that data source is trusted. But if you see an ORL level on it, then you can trust it.
Good. And then you're saying that the ORL levels are assigned to a source, which I like very much. It's not a data or a map or a data set. It's a source. So I'm imagining that those are assigned, for example, to a web service, right? Exactly. Which allows them to query, to do real-time queries and do your nice maps. Okay, good. That's really, really good. Right. And also, you have to make sure that there are criteria being associated with that. For example, like an ORL1 has they have 24/7 availability. They have backup servers. They have a phone number, a person you can call. They have the appropriate metadata, stuff like that. Yeah, great. And I would just add from your presentation, Luis, and I really appreciate it. I'd be very interested, and I think, the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster would be very interested in identifying what data sets are available once that international charter is invoked because of a disaster, and where are those, and are those data available via services, right? So if there's an international charter that's invoked and all of a sudden that data becomes available, then for example, in the dashboard or in a GeoCollaborate session, we just want to turn that data on and let it come into the collaborative environment. So are those people that are trusted data providers under this charter in positions where they can set up, these WFS services and offer KMLs and things like that right away, so the data can be put to use as soon as possible.
Hey, Dave, this is Terry. Can you or somebody send me a definition of the different ORL ones and the different levels and what they represent? I did a Google search, and ORL1 is an opioid-like receptor. So I don't.
Well, fortunately, we haven't published our ORL work yet, so you probably won't find it on Google. But as I said, it's evolving within the disaster lifecycle cluster. You're talking to them, and we have a couple of leads in that area. Carrie Hicks from Duke Energy has taken a really strong leadership role in this area because she's looking at it from a operational user standpoint. So it still has some evolution to go, but we'd be happy. And there's some other information available, I think, on some of the maybe the telecom notes or whatever that we've had from the disaster lifecycle cluster. But we're talking about these too at every federation meeting now in our lifecycle cluster breakout sessions.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think we have some good presentations that give a feel for what they accomplish, and we can work to get those posted to our ESIP Disasters Cluster. We have a kind of a home page, a wiki. So maybe I'll take an action to work with Jessica to help get some of that material updated there.
That sounds great, Karen. Thanks for doing that. And I got a message from Bob Downs from CDAC. He said his microphone is not working properly, but he's wondering, Luis and Terry, whether any major gaps in data provider capabilities were observed that should be addressed in your exercise.
Well, for the concept development study, that's exactly the type of information we're collecting right now. Gotcha. That's what we're trying to analyze, and that's what the RFI is out to help us do an analysis of.
Gotcha. Great.
So that's a great question, and that's what we hope to find out get the information in the next month and do the analysis in the next couple of months.
That's why Bob makes the big bucks.
Well, I thought Luis did, but great.
See, Bob can't answer me because his microphone's not working. He's probably giving me some signal. So, okay, well, that's great. Or do we have any other questions out there? Maggie, it's good to hear your voice.
Thanks.
Okay, well,
I have just a quick question for Maggie. This is Karen, and I'm just thinking about those detailed exercises that you did in California, and I wonder how that reflects the improvement areas that Luis identified: the data discovery and access, the collaboration, and real-time data access, and whether you've found similar kinds of focus of, where different groups that are addressing disaster management like we are. Did you come across the same kinds of areas needing to be improved?
Oh yeah, definitely. In fact, we just had a meeting, an after action meeting with the folks for the California fires, and these same topics keep coming up over and over again. So it's definitely something, excuse me, that everybody is considering, all of these issues. So it's something that we run across across the board, and that was in a real disaster. It wasn't in an exercise.
All right. Dave, before we close, I just wanted to kind of close with one of the things we want to head to next is this idea of enhancing or augmenting metadata in the science repositories in a non-intrusive way. And so we had asked Ken to put together kind of a one-pager. And so that is available. There's a link through the collaborative notes, that Google Docs page that we listed there. So I'm hoping that next month we can look at that question and see if we can come up with kind of pilot projects, ideas to pursue in that area. Not just ESIP test beds, but test beds involving other groups. So, Ken, do you want to add any comments to that?
Karen, this is Sarah. Ken had to leave, so apologies. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, Sarah.
Karen?
Hi.
So this is Don. The work that Terry is talking about is partly sponsored by FGDC, which is very much involved in metadata and metadata standards. So you might respond to the RFI in that capacity.
And Karen, somebody in my office, what is the question, and I can follow up with Ken.
Well, we were just we're going to explore the one-page description of the problem that we're trying to solve as we get into discussing ways that we can submit proposals, people or groups like FGDC. NASA might have an opportunity.
Right.
And maybe even through All Hazards Consortium. So that's going to be part of our discussion then next month.
Yes, in fact, we were discussing that sort of behind the scenes when he had to leave. So I will pass this along. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, well that's all I had.
Okay, Karen. Yeah, and I think maybe for the next call we should start it off where we left off here, and maybe start off the call talking about some of Ken's work, because I think that's really important stuff. How to augment metadata so we can make it more ORL compliant. I think that's really important. It's a great idea. Okay. Well, I think I'd like to thank everybody. Terry and Luis, thank you so much for your presentations. We'll be looking at that and accessing the RFI so we can respond with some information that's hopefully helpful, that can bring you more up to speed with some of the work we're doing and the technology that's available that could go into your report. And I'm going to stop the recording here and thank everybody for listening and also joining. Only 5 minutes over, so that's not too bad. Anybody on the East Coast, please stay safe.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Sarah, good to hear you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And then, yeah.